What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the 2Game Podcast, where I am here to give you my top 10 video game characters of all time. So this episode is sponsored by Patreon. This was what they voted on for November. So I am ready to dive headfirst into my top 10 favorite video game characters of all time. So just right off the bat, I'm just going ahead and say it. Venusaur beats Geralt 100% in this ranking. If you've been a friend of the podcast for any length of time, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. We did a tournament-based style episode several years ago. It was like one of our first episodes, and it is the one thing that has carried episode to episode is that we said that Venusaur would beat Geralt in a fight. I stand by that, okay? I will die on that hill there, Chris Norman. But I'm really just joking. Venusaur is not on this list. So these are not the 10 best video game characters, like not in terms of like their games are the best or anything like that, okay? This is just which video game characters I love playing the most, which ones I enjoyed getting to know, which ones were developed the best, which games I love the most. And I kind of put that all into a pot and I kind of ranked them based on that. So my number one is not necessarily what's going to be your number one, or even my number 10 might not be even in your top 10. At the end of the day, this is my list, not yours. But hey, leave me a comment down below of what your favorite video game characters are of all time. And I don't mind discussing it that way. But there are so many video game characters out there that our list are going to differ somewhat. All right. But without further ado, guys, let's jump into my top 10 favorite video game characters of all time. Starting off with number 10, I have Sonic. I played the shit out of Sonic when I was a kid. I haven't played him a lot here in the recent years, but I played the shit out of him when I was a kid. Loved all the animated shows and even the movies up to this point, like Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. Surprisingly, really fucking good movies. So if you have not seen either of those two Sonic movies, you should go watch them like tonight. But I love his character and I love all the other characters in those games. And this just has been a game that was kind of like a game that I would play on a whim and that I would just play it to relax. And then you'd get to like one point where it would be like a Donkey Kong level that would just absolutely piss you the fuck off. And then you quit for a few days and then come back. That's kind of my relationship with Sonic. Now, truth be told, Sonic almost did not make this list. There were a few other characters that I had contemplated putting in this number 10 spot, but it was just like I loved his character, not just in the video games, but in other properties as well that kind of put him in number 10. So I have Sonic at number 10. At number 9, this is a video game series I have not played a ton of. I've played probably about 3, maybe 4 of these games, and that is Doom Guy. So I played the shit out of Doom 64, Doom 2016, which I played when I was in Alaska for 2 weeks on a paramedic job. Played the fuck out of 2016. I loved the 2016 Doom game. And then I played Doom Eternal, and I wasn't as high on that game. I still had a lot of fun with it, but I wasn't a huge fan of the platforming in that game. I need to go back and really just finish it. And now, Doom Eternal, I wasn't as high on in comparison to the 2016 one. I just felt like that video game I felt like they tried doing too much in that game in comparison to 2016, which was they went back to basics, but also expanded on it as well, which was a great idea. But overall, Doom Guy, fucking savage, guys. Like, in terms of design, character design, like the dude absolutely looks fucking awesome. And then couple that with some of the heavy metal score that's in there and the soundtrack, and it is just a fucking awesome set of games. All right. Now, we're not going to talk about the Doom movie with The Rock. We're not going to talk about that because it's not very good. But in terms of the games that I have played, Doom Guy is so fucking cool that he had to make my list. And at number 8, Geralt of Rivia. Now, I debated on whether or not putting him on this list at all because I wanted to stick mostly with characters that showed up in video games first and not necessarily in other properties that got transferred to video games. So obviously there's the Witcher books. Didn't want to put him in this because of that reason, but I felt like he was such he's such an important character to video games, and he's such a great character, such a badass character, that I found it hard not to put him on this list. So he is really the kind of the outlier out of the 10 that I have on here, where it's mostly characters that are strictly video game characters. Now they could be in other properties, anime, manga, books, whatever, movies, but for the most part they started off in video games. The Witcher 3, one of the best video games of all time, hundreds of hours long, and it feels like that game is never ending. But in terms of what they do with his character in that game, absolutely fucking loved it. And the fact that the game kind of changes the narrative based on some of your decisions, loved it even more. So you could kind of craft Geralt to however you wanted him to be. You could make him this asshole that would not help anybody, or you can make him the type of character that would help everybody and he was just the nicest guy ever, right? You could kind of craft that character the way you wanted it to. And I think he's such a versatile character in that regard. And I love The Witcher 3. It has some of the best side missions ever. It's one of the best RPGs of all time. Geralt at number 8 for sure. At number 7, we have Aloy from the Horizon series, Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. Love both of those games. And I think what they've done with her character in just 2 games is really great, giving us a great female character, a strong female character at that. And I just think the storylines for both of those games are really great. And then on top of that, the combat is some of the best combat, period, in any video game. And again, her character, you can kind of craft how you want her to be in a way. I mean, there's only so many things you can do with her character before the game kind of takes over. But again, you can kind of do the same thing with her that you can with Geralt, where you can make her this stern asshole that doesn't want to help people, or you want her to be a character that will help everybody. And I have always kind of crafted my characters to be kind of like that if I'm given the opportunity, where it's like, okay, I'm going to help you for sure, but I'm also not going to take your shit at all. And so that's kind of the character that I got from Aloy, was she's going to help you, but if you start talking shit, she's going to put you on your ass. And I just think Aloy is one of the best written, not only just female characters, but just video game characters, period, in the 2 games. And they just made her very relatable with a lot of the shit that she went through in both of those games. And yeah, I love Aloy, number 7. At number 6, kind of cheating, but it's essentially the same character. They're a little bit different, but I'm combining them. That is Pyra and Mythra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on a deep dive series with Chris Norman, and it is one of my favorite gaming experiences, period. And Pyra and Mythra, for being the same character, it's like 2 sides of the same coin, essentially. You got Pyra, who is a little bit more of the loving, endearing character, and you got Mythra, who's kind of like not gonna take your shit. And I just loved what they did with both of those characters throughout Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and then combine that with Rex, and that relationship was so damn good. It was like this love triangle, but not a love triangle because it's the same character essentially. And I just thought that they developed Pyra and Mythra so damn well over the course of that 100+ hour game, and it just made me want more of those characters, especially her relationship with the other characters in her group. And the fact that we got some of that great character development where it made her vulnerable. Like they definitely humanized her character in that game to the point where like you could definitely relate to what was going on with her and the people around her. And yeah, absolutely loved Pyra and Mythra, guys. And at number 5, I have Link from Legend of Zelda. So I have played a lot of Legend of Zelda games. I haven't played a lot of the earlier games, but Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, all those games, I absolutely love Legend of Zelda. And it's kind of hard to put him a little bit higher on this list. Now, if we were talking like video game franchises, he would probably be number 1 or number 2. Like the Legend of Zelda games they're like some of my favorite video games period. Especially the recent ones, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, which made my top 10 favorite video games of all time. And the only reason he's at number 5 and not higher is because we don't get a whole lot of character development for him. He's a silent character throughout all the games, and it's really just you existing that world, essentially, and kind of taking it all in. So to me, Link, he doesn't get a little bit higher on this list, mainly because of that one particular reason. Now, he jumped a lot of the other characters that I have here, Pyra Mythra, Aloy, Geralt, who have great character development in those games. His games are just so fucking amazing. It's hard to kick him out of the top 5. Like, when I think best video game characters of all time, like, Link is somewhere in that discussion as being one of the best video game characters of all time. So putting him outside the top 5 would be, to me, blasphemous, because I love those games so much, and I think he's such an iconic character. And just from the aspect of being one of the most influential characters in video games, period. I mean, you go to a number, like hundreds and hundreds of video games out there, right? You can go out to them and say, wow, that was taken from Legend of Zelda. I mean, even to some degree, like Elden Ring, which has become like influential for a number of video games since its release. It took some shit from Breath of the Wild. So, I mean, it's so influential in hundreds of video games out there that it's hard to not put Link in my top 5 somewhere. And I love those games so much. If there's a Legend of Zelda game coming out, I'm going to fucking play it. Now at number 4, I feel dirty for putting this character number 4. He's at number 4 because I love those games so much. If a new game comes out, I'm 100% going to fucking play it. At number 4, I have Mario. It feels dirty putting him there. I think if you are going based on best video game characters of all time and looking at it unbiased, objectively, which one is probably the best? Mario is probably number 1. Like, objectively speaking, Mario is the best video game character of all time. Is he my favorite? There's a little bit of difference there. I don't know of a single Mario game that I just absolutely dislike. Now, I like them to all varying degrees for sure, but I don't think there's a Mario game out there that I just dislike. Super Mario Maker, not my cup of tea, but the overall game is still really, really great. And if you're talking most influential characters or franchises or games of all time, Mario is probably number 1. Has to be. I love all the games. Super Mario 64, grew up on that, played hundreds of hours of that damn game. And then Super Mario Odyssey, one of the best video games of all time, for sure. Like, objectively speaking, it's not in my top 10, but that is one of the best games of all time. Just how they were able to mesh all the different eras of Mario into that one game and make it unique and also fresh at the same time. At number 3, I debated, and now 3 and 2, you ask me tomorrow, these characters are probably flopped. All right, they're probably swapped in some form or fashion, and the next day they're probably swapped again. So they're kind of interchangeable. At number 3, I have Joel from The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2. I remember playing The Last of Us. I remember where I was, like what time of the day it was, when I watched and played that first like opening act, the first like 20-30 minutes of that video game. And as gut-wrenching as that opening act is, I think that is the best opener for a video game of all time. It's not even close. As gut-wrenching as it is, I think it is the best opening sequence of all time for a video game. And I remember playing that game and I felt like my heart was just ripped out of my chest. Now, I was a father when I played that game, so I might have a different perspective of that opening act in comparison to people that don't have children, which also might explain why Joel is so high on my list, is because as a father, I can relate to a lot of the things that he does throughout this series. And I think he is one of the most relatable, conflicted character that is, you can kind of bounce on the line of whether he's actually a good character versus like a bad character. I think he is just one of the best morally gray characters ever put in a video game. Now, regardless of what happened in The Last of Us 2 and how you feel about that scene, I think objectively speaking, if you are looking at who are some of the best crafted characters of all time, Joel has to be in that conversation. Somewhere, some form or fashion, he has to be in that conversation. He starts off The Last of Us very prickly. He doesn't want to be attached to anybody. He doesn't want any type of relationships. And then Ellie comes into his life, and he's trying everything to push her away. And you can see that relationship between those two characters really blossom over that 20-30 hour game. And again, some of the best character development in any game, period. Now, spoiler alert for the end of The Last of Us. There are chapters down below. You can skip ahead if you would. But one of the things at the very end of The Last of Us is the choice. Does he tell her versus not tell her? Now, you can have your opinions on whether he should have told her versus he should not have told her. But looking at that character absolutely fits what he did. Okay? He loves her as a daughter now. And he doesn't want to lose her. At the end of that story, he views her as a daughter, and he doesn't want to see her give her life up. And he's already lost one daughter, and now he's gaining another just to lose her again. And look, I get it. As selfish as that choice is, he's choosing her over saving the human race at that point. I get it. But in terms of what his character has gone through, what his character has done for the entire video game, you can't blame them. You can't blame him for choosing Ellie over the human race. He has always been, and throughout that entire game, he has always been that character that will choose the people that he loves over anyone else. He is not some naive little kid who is going to look in the best of people. No, he is going to see the worst of people, and maybe they don't need to be saved. But why does he have to give up Ellie, who he absolutely loves as a daughter now, to save everybody else? I get it that it's selfish, but that morally gray aspect to his character is just so fucking good. And it's hard to not put Joel a little bit higher on my list, but I'm going to stick him with number 3 because at number 2, we have Ellie. And again, I can swap these two back and forth any given day. But Ellie was just a fucking blast to play as in The Last of Us and then The Last of Us 2. And I'm going to use her character more so for The Last of Us 2 in comparison to Joel, because Joel you play as more of in The Last of Us. You get that one little segment where you play as her, which was a great fucking idea, by the way. But The Last of Us 2, now, granted, half the game you're Ellie, half the game you're Abby, and regardless of what you think about that game and the choices that the developers made, I personally think it's an amazing game. We gave it high reviews, high scores on our deep dive review that we did when we first started this podcast. But in terms of kind of the same things I said with Joel, she's a morally great character. She's very naive. She's very innocent. And then you can see her slowly turning kind of more into Joel as the series progresses. And then when you get to the end of The Last of Us, Part 2, where she is about to kill Abby and she chooses not to. And to me, that was such a great tale of revenge and trying not to be consumed by said revenge. I just think they did such an amazing job of developing her character, not only over Part 1, but Part 2 as well. So again, some of the same things I said about Joel can be said about Ellie, but I just love Ellie. She's a fucking badass. She's not afraid to tell people what she thinks. She's another one of those characters that if you talk shit, she's going to put you on your ass. Or she's going to say what's on her mind and fucking piss you off. She does not give a shit. And I love that character so damn much. All right. My number 1 favorite video game character of all time. If you have been listening to the podcast for any length of time, y'all know that some of my favorite video games, period, are Pokemon games. Now, I bitch a lot about Pokemon games, all right? I will bitch, moan, and complain with the best of them in regards to what the Pokemon series is right now. Like the state of the Pokemon series in the franchise. I don't feel like that series is evolving enough in the mainline games. And again, I will bitch about it, but it is because I love Pokemon so damn much. I grew up on Pokemon. This was one of my first video games, period was playing Pokemon Red. I remember buying it for the Game Boy, had the little fucking light on the side, and you didn't have the backlight, so you had to have that if you were playing in the dark, especially on road trips. So my number one favorite video game character of all time is going to be the very first Pokemon that I ever chose, and that is going to be Charmander slash Charizard. Charizard is the fucking GOAT, okay? He is the absolute fucking GOAT when it comes to Pokemon. But I gotta include Charmander in there because that was legitimately the first Pokemon that I ever chose. And Charmander is a fucking savage in his own right. But personally, I think in terms of design, Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, the three best designed Pokemon, period. I'm mainly just talking about Charizard and Charmander here. But like, if I'm playing a Pokemon game, if I have the option to choose Charmander or Charizard at some point in that video game, like if that is a Pokemon that I can go catch or that I can trade for or whatever, he is going to be on my team. He is my A1 since day one. I will always choose Charmander and Charizard if given the opportunity. Now, the fire type Pokemon are some of my favorite Pokemon, period. So it kind of sucks to not be able to use the others. And sometimes I'll have two fire types on my team, like Houndour and Houndoom, because that dude's a fucking savage in his own right. But Charizard, like, come on. It's a fire-breathing dragon. I get it that he's not a technical dragon type, but he's a fucking dragon, all right? It's a fire-breathing dragon, just fucking dope. And then the best designed Pokemon of all time is Charizard, 100%. Like, again, it goes back to it's a fire-breathing dragon, and I do not like the fact that they made him a fire or flying type, but what the fuck ever, all right? But yeah, guys, Charmander, Charizard, my favorite video game characters of all time. And again, I grew up playing Pokemon, and I have played at least one game of every single generation that has been released of the mainline games. And again, I would choose Charmander every single time if given the opportunity. I have played hundreds of hours of Pokemon. It's a disgusting amount of time of my life has been devoted to Pokemon. I played the trading card games. I watched the anime. To me, it's not even close. This is my favorite video game characters of all time. But guys, let me know down below what I got right, what I got wrong. Who's your favorite Pokemon? What would be your top 10 video game characters of all time? Let me know down below. And then also in the description below, we have links to all of our social media accounts. We would greatly appreciate it if you went there, like, subscribe, follow, what the fuck ever. Would really help us out. And if you want to consider supporting us, go to patreon.com/2game, where you can support us monthly there. And we would greatly appreciate it if you did that as well. But guys, that's going to be it for me. I'll catch y'all next time on another episode. Laters.